The sun was setting blood-red over the dusty town of Elkhorn Ridge. The wooden auction platform creaked under the boots of townsfolk, gathered like vultures for tonight's twisted entertainment. Among them stood Marshal Jed Wexley, a man known not for justice, but for what he could profit from a soul in chains. And today, he brought his own wife to the stage, Emma. Her hands were bound, her face bruised, her pride shattered, but not gone. No one spoke. No one dared ask why a lawman was auctioning off his own wife. The town had learned long ago. Elkhorn Ridge had rules of its own, and Jed Wexley was the rule. She stood tall, silent. Her lips trembled, but her eyes didn't beg. That's what stunned the crowd most. She wasn't broken, not yet. A few whispers stirred the air. Is this even legal? Since when did he get married? Why is she dressed like a prisoner? Wexley's voice boomed. Start and bid. $10. Someone at the back laughed, but before anyone could raise a hand, a raspy voice from the shadows cut through the hush. I'll bid 50. The crowd turned, faces pale. Even Wexley froze for a heartbeat, because the man stepping forward wore a long, dust-coated coat and a black hat known in 5 counties. They called him Colter, an outlaw, a ghost. A man with a bounty so high, not even bounty hunters dared chase him. And now he stood here, not with guns blazing, not with threats, just with a bid. Emma's eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. Wexley narrowed his eyes. You got no right to be here, Colter, Ash smiled faintly. And you got no right to sell what was already mine. The sun was setting blood-red over the dusty town of Elkhorn Ridge. The wooden auction platform creaked under the boots of townsfolk, gathered like vultures for tonight's twisted entertainment. Among them stood Marshal Jed Wexley, a man known not for justice, but for what he could profit from a soul in chains. And today he brought his own wife to the stage, Emma. Her hands were bound, her face bruised, her pride shattered, but not gone. No one spoke. No one dared ask why a lawman was auctioning off his own wife. The town had learned long ago. Elkhorn Ridge had rules of its own, and Jed Wexley was the rule. She stood tall, silent. Her lips trembled, but her eyes didn't beg. That's what stunned the crowd most. She wasn't broken, not yet. A few whispers stirred the air. Is this even legal? Since when did he get married? Why is she dressed like a prisoner? Wexley's voice boomed. Start and bid. $10. Someone at the back laughed, but before anyone could raise a hand, a raspy voice from the shadows cut through the hush. I'll bid 50. The crowd turned, faces pale. Even Wexley froze for a heartbeat, because the man stepping forward wore a long, dust-coated coat and a black hat known in 5 counties. They called him Colter, an outlaw, a ghost. A man with a bounty so high, not even bounty hunters dared chase him. And now he stood here, not with guns blazing, not with threats, just with a bid. Emma's eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. Wexley narrowed his eyes. You got no right to be here, Colter, Ash smiled faintly. And you got no right to sell what was already mine. Emma's heart pounded like a war drum. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Colter stood on the auction stage like a storm wrapped in skin, calm on the surface, but ready to destroy anything that tried to touch her again. The 2 riflemen flanked the platform, aiming steady, waiting for Wexley's signal. But the crowd, once drunk on cruelty, was beginning to shift. They'd seen women sold before. They'd seen men punished for less. But never had they seen an outlaw throw down a badge and call a lawman a fraud in front of God and everyone else. Wexley bared his teeth. You think this town'll believe you over me? Ash kept his voice low, calm. I don't care what the town believes. I'm not here for a trial. I'm here to take her home. Emma's lip quivered, her knees buckled, but she stayed upright. Wexley laughed bitterly, pointing at the torn photo Ash had thrown. So what? You found an old picture? And made up a bedtime story? She doesn't even remember you. Emma spoke then, voice fragile but sharp. He called me Little Willow, back when I still wore my hair in braids. Ash's jaw tightened. You remember? I never forgot, she whispered. Wexley's smile vanished. The crowd stirred. The butcher stepped back. The preacher covered his mouth, and then the unthinkable happened. One of the riflemen lowered his gun. Marshal Colter, the man said slowly, I fought with you in Apache Bluff. You saved my brother's life. Ash didn't respond. His eyes were still locked on Wexley. The second rifleman hesitated, confused. Wexley saw the shift, and fury overtook him. You coward! You think he's gonna protect you? He's a damn outlaw! Ash stepped forward, slow, deliberate. Maybe. But I never put a woman on a block like livestock. You did. And then, without warning, Wexley grabbed Emma by the arm, yanking her hard in front of him, pistol drawn, aimed at her head. The crowd screamed. Back off! He roared. You come one step closer, I'll blow her brains out right here! Ash froze. So did everyone else. Emma winced, eyes closed, her breath ragged. Her hands were still bound. The rope had cut deep into her wrists, blood soaking the knot. But she didn't beg, didn't scream. I told you before, Wexley snarled, breath hot against her neck. She's mine. No paper can undo that. Ash raised both hands slowly. Let her go. You ain't walking out of here with her, Wexley hissed. Not unless it's over my dead. A loud crack echoed through the square. The second rifleman had fired, but not at Ash. Wexley's gun flew from his hand, clattering, to the platform. In a blink, Ash surged forward, tackled him to the ground. The crowd scattered as fists flew. Dust rose in the air like smoke from an old war. Emma fell to her knees, chest heaving, staring at the gun inches from her fingertips. Her fingers twitched toward it, but her hands were still bound. Then she heard Ash's voice, strained but clear. Emma, run! But she didn't. Not this time. Instead, she grabbed the gun with her bound hands, staggered to her feet, and pointed it. Not at Ash, but at the man who had once called her his wife. Wexley froze beneath Ash's weight. Blood trickled from his lip. Go ahead, he panted. Shoot me. Be just like him. Emma's voice was hollow. I'm nothing like you. But she didn't shoot. She stepped back. And the crowd, silent now, watched as the girl who had once been a prisoner made her own choice for the first time in years. The dust hadn't settled yet. Ash stood over Wexley, chest rising and falling with the weight of everything he'd held in for years. His fists were bloodied. Wexley's lip was split, one eye swelling shut. The man who'd once strutted through Elkhorn Ridge like a king now lay coughing in the dirt. But Ash didn't strike again. Instead, he stood and turned to Emma. She was still holding the pistol in her bound hands, her breath shallow, her shoulders trembling. Not from fear, but from the sheer weight of this moment. The crowd stood frozen, unsure what came next. Sheriff Boyd, the old man who usually hid behind paperwork and whiskey, finally stepped out from behind the saloon doors. His gray mustache twitched nervously. Is someone going to tell me what the hell is going on here? Ash didn't look at him. His eyes were on Emma. She's been held prisoner, Ash said firmly. Sold, beaten, passed off as a wife under a false name. Wexley groaned from the ground. She signed the certificate. Emma interrupted, voice steady. You put a gun to my head when you made me sign it. That ain't marriage. That's slavery. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ash looked at the sheriff now. You got a jail cell? Use it. Because this man just broke more laws than most outlaws I've hunted. Sheriff Boyd scratched his head. Wexley's been the marshal here near 10 years. And he's ruled with fear and silence, Ash snapped. Look around. No one here is backing him. Now, the sheriff's eyes scanned the crowd. Not a soul stepped forward to defend Wexley. Even the preacher kept his head bowed. With a reluctant grunt, the sheriff knelt and cuffed Wexley, hauling him to his feet. "You're under arrest for unlawful imprisonment, forced marriage, and assault." Wexley spat blood. "You'll regret this, Colter." Ash stepped close, voice low. "I already regret letting you live." He turned back to Emma, who was now kneeling in the dust. He moved to her quickly, knelt, and gently took the rope from her wrists. His fingers trembled as he loosened the knot, revealing bruised skin underneath. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Emma didn't pull away. "Why'd you come back?" Ash didn't answer right away. He looked around, at the people still staring, at the broken stage, at the badge that now meant nothing. "I made a promise to your sister before she died, that I'd find you, protect you. But it stopped being a promise the moment I saw you again." Her eyes searched his, and for a brief second, the years they'd lost seemed to vanish. "You're free now, Emma." She looked down at her wrists, now bare. Then slowly she took the rope in her hand, stood up, and walked to the edge of the platform. With all eyes on her, she lifted the rope high and threw it into the fire pit meant for the post-auction bonfire. The flames swallowed it whole, and the crowd, uncertain at first, began to clap. Slowly, then louder. The sound grew, not just for Emma, but for what had just ended, for what had just begun. But even in that moment, Ash felt something in his gut twist, because freedom, especially in the West, always comes with a price. And the man who'd placed the second highest bid that day hadn't left town yet. Just as the applause began to die down, a slow clap echoed from the back of the crowd. Not the kind that celebrated victory, the kind that challenged it. Everyone turned. A man stepped forward from the shadows near the old barber shop. He wore a long tan duster, boots polished, and a dark green bandana around his neck. His hat tilted low, but not low enough to hide the scar across his jaw. Ash's face darkened. Logan Creed. Emma stiffened. "Who?" Ash spoke, his voice suddenly colder than the wind. "Bounty hunter, hangs around border towns, buys lives, and ends them." Logan smirked, arms folded. Now, Ash. No need to slander a man who plays by the rules. I made a legal bid today, $90, cash, right before you showed up with your big badge and bigger ego." Ash stepped off the stage, jaw tight. It was a mockery, a show. "That auction is over," Logan tilted his head. "That woman was still on the platform, still had a rope round her wrists. And last I checked, the rules of Elkhorn Ridge say—" He reached into his coat and pulled out a crumpled town ordinance paper, the kind Wexley used to wave around like scripture. "All open bids are valid until the sale is ended, by gavel or town approval." Sheriff Boyd muttered. "That law was written for cattle." "Then she was treated like one," Logan snapped, eyes blazing. "And I was the last standing bidder. So either the town honors the rules Wexley lived by, or you admit this place was nothing but a stage for tyranny." The crowd murmured uneasily. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "He can't mean it." "I do," Logan said sharply, looking straight at her. "I made my bid fair and square, and if this town believes in justice, then you come with me." Ash moved so fast, no one saw the punch coming. Logan stumbled, back, lip split, hand flying to his holster, but Ash's gun was already drawn. "Try it," Ash hissed. "I dare you." Logan wiped the blood from his chin and chuckled. "Easy, Colter. You think I came alone?" That's when Emma noticed 3 more riders at the end of the street, all mounted, all armed, all watching. "Logan," Ash said, through gritted teeth, "you knew she was mine. You just wanted a fight." Logan grinned. "I wanted the reward. Wexley had a bounty on her, called her a runaway wife, accused of theft. That bounty still stands in 3 territories." Emma's knees buckled. Ash looked at the sheriff. "Tell me that bounty's void." Sheriff Boyd rubbed his temples. I don't know." Wexley never filed it through town hall. Then it's not legal, Ash barked. Logan shrugged. Doesn't stop bounty men. Some folks pay off the books. Doesn't mean we don't collect. Ash's voice dropped to a deadly calm. You try to take her, and it'll be your last payday. Emma finally spoke, voice cracking. Why would anyone put a bounty on me? Logan looked her in the eyes, and for the first time, his voice lost its smugness. Because you're not who you think you are. The wind blew colder as silence wrapped around the street like a noose. Logan's words hung heavy in the air. Because you're not who you think you are. Emma's lips parted, but no sound came out. Ash turned his gaze sharply to Logan. You're bluffing. Logan smirked, licking the blood from his lip. You sure about that, Marshal? Ash took a step forward, gun still drawn. Talk. Logan raised both hands, not in surrender, but in mock grace. She wasn't always Emma. She was born in Santa Fe, to a man named Judge Caro. Her name was Annabelle Caro, daughter of one of the most powerful land judges in New Mexico Territory. Emma blinked. No, that's not true. I lived with my uncle since I was 5. Logan nodded. Exactly. Because your father sent you away, after your mother was murdered. The crowd gasped. Even Sheriff Boyd took a stunned step back. Ash's brows furrowed, but he didn't lower his gun. And Wexley found out who she was, Logan said, pacing now, voice slick like oil. Knew she was worth something, not just money, power. If Judge Caro ever found out his daughter was alive and being held like livestock, he'd burn this town to the ground. But Wexley was smart. He kept her hidden, changed her name, built a lie. Emma felt the dirt beneath her shift. Like the ground itself didn't want to hold her anymore. My mother, she whispered. I barely remember her. Just lavender and humming. Logan's expression softened, just for a second. Your mother used to sing to you in the garden. She wore a lavender shawl. Emma's knees gave out. Ash caught her before she hit the ground, holding her steady. She looked up at him, tear-filled eyes searching for something real, something that wouldn't vanish like the rest. But how do you know this? She asked. Logan's smile returned. Because I was hired by your father, to find you. 3 years ago, Ash's hand twitched on the gun. You're lying, he growled. No, Marshal, Logan replied. I just didn't expect to find her at the end of a rope, being auctioned off like a sack of flour. Sheriff Boyd finally spoke. You're saying this whole thing, Wexley's marriage and the bounties, it was a cover-up? Logan nodded. And if word gets out that Judge Caro's daughter was treated like this, Elkhorn Ridge will be a crater by sundown. Ash turned to Emma, voice low. Do you remember anything? The name? The house? Emma nodded slowly, dazed. A man with silver hair. He gave me a wooden locket, said it had my mother's picture in it. But I lost it when I was taken. Logan reached into his coat. Emma's breath caught. He pulled out a small wooden locket, carved with the initials AC on one side. I've been carrying this for years, he said softly. Your father gave it to me, told me not to stop until I found you. Emma's fingers trembled as she reached for it. The moment she touched the locket, her face broke. The memories came crashing in like a flood. The garden, the songs, the soft voice calling her Belle. Ash stood stunned. She's really his daughter, and that changed everything, because now she wasn't just a rescued woman. She was the missing daughter of a powerful judge who was about to find out the hell his daughter had lived through. And Ash knew the West would burn when that truth reached Santa Fe. Ash Colter hadn't blinked in what felt like minutes. His gun lowered, not in surrender, but in disbelief. He'd faced outlaws, killers, and corrupt mayors, but nothing prepared him for this. Emma, or rather, Annabelle Caro, daughter of the most feared judge west of the Rockies. Logan stepped back, letting the crowd murmur. The weight of what had been revealed was sinking in like a storm settling over the prairie. Sheriff Boyd cleared his throat. If what you say is true, then we have a serious problem. More than one, Ash muttered. Emma clutched the wooden locket in both hands, like it was the only anchor left in her storm-tossed world. Ash, what does this mean for us? Ash didn't answer right away, because deep down, he knew the truth. If she really was Judge Caro's daughter, she didn't belong to this dusty, bloody world anymore. She needs protection, Logan declared. More than you can give. I've got men, a trail route, and a contact in Santa Fe waiting. I can get her home. Ash stepped forward. That's not your call. She's not yours either. Ash's jaw clenched. She's not a possession. Emma looked between them, both men standing like thunderclouds ready to collide. She took a shaky breath. I don't want to be sent away like cargo. I just found out who I am. I want to choose where I go. Logan softened, but his tone stayed practical. Annabelle, your father's not just a man. He's power. The moment word reaches him that you're alive, this town will be crawling with riders. Some to bring you back, others to keep you from ever returning. Ash nodded. He's right about that part, Sheriff Boyd added. And if Wexley's name is tied to any of this, well, let's just say a few folks in this town might hang for looking the other way. Suddenly, Emma looked at Ash. You once told me, the West doesn't care about names, only about what you do. So tell me, Ash, what are you going to do now? Ash looked at her, the wind catching a strand of her hair. I'm going to make sure no one lays a finger on you. Not a bounty hunter, not a judge, not even God himself if he comes down riding a white horse with a legal writ. A small smile touched her lips, sad and grateful. Logan groaned. Romance is cute, Marshal, but I'm telling you, if you keep her here, it'll be war. Ash didn't flinch. Then tell them to bring fire. We've got enough wood in Elkhorn Ridge to burn a whole empire. Logan stared at him. You're risking everything. Ash holstered his gun, walked to Emma's side, and said calmly, She's worth it. At that moment, a rider galloped into town, dust flying behind. He was young, breathless, and terrified. He shouted before his horse even stopped. Riders! 10 men, armed, coming from the East Ridge. They've got a black banner. Logan's face turned stone. A black banner means bounty killers. Mercenaries, not law, just blood. Ash's hand went to his gun again. Sheriff Boyd muttered, This is gonna get ugly. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Then I guess we find out who stands and who runs. The wind had turned mean. Dust swirled like ghosts in the streets of Elkhorn Ridge, and the townsfolk froze like statues as the news spread. 10 riders, armed, flying the black banner. Ash didn't speak. He just turned to Sheriff Boyd and gave a single nod, the kind of nod that meant, We've been through hell before. Let's do it again. Boyd spat on the dirt. I'll get the deputies. Ash looked at Logan. You say you want to protect her. Time to prove it. Logan cracked his neck. I didn't carry that locket across 4 states just to run now. Ash turned to Emma. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with a steady flame. You stay here. No matter what happens, she interrupted. I'm done hiding, Ash. If I'm Annabelle Caro, then it's time I stopped letting men decide my life for me. There was no time to argue. A low rumble echoed across the plain, hooves thundering, metal clanking. 10 shadows crested the East Ridge like reapers on horseback. They were monsters in human form. Black coats, dust-covered rifles, eyes cold as winter graves, and at the front rode a giant of a man with a scar splitting his face like lightning. His name would later be whispered in taverns from Texas to Dakota, Malcolm Harlan, the butcher of Roscoe. He raised his rifle and bellowed, Turn over the girl, or this town burns. Ash stepped forward alone. His badge caught the last bit. of sunlight like a star pinned to his chest. "She's under my protection," he said. "Calm, cold. You want her? You go through me." Harlan smirked. "That's the plan." But before he could signal the charge, a second voice echoed from behind the saloon, deep, scratchy, and full of venom. "You boys forgot one thing." All heads turned. An old man with a bent back and a long rifle stood at the edge of the saloon steps. His face was wrinkled like desert leather, but his eyes, they burned with something ancient. It was old Merton, the town drunk. Or so they thought. He cocked his rifle. "She's one of ours now, and Elkhorn don't hand over its daughters." Doors creaked open. Women, old men, even children stepped out with whatever weapons they could find: broom handles, kitchen knives, antique pistols. Emma stood beside Ash. The town stood beside her. Logan stepped forward and said, "You might have 10 riders, but we've got 10,000 reasons not to let her go." Harlan's face twisted into a growl. The tension cracked like thunder. Ash whispered to Emma, "You scared?" She nodded, eyes glistening. He smiled. "Good, means you're still alive." And then, Malcolm Harlan raised his arm, a silent breath, a twitch of muscle, and the first shot rang out. The shot echoed like thunder across the open land. Ash ducked, low, pulling Emma behind a water trough just as bullets ripped through the wooden porch posts. Splinters flew like bees, stinging anyone too slow to move. Elkhorn Ridge had become a war zone in the blink of an eye. From the saloon windows, Logan returned fire with a Winchester, his aim sharp and deadly. Old Merton had already taken out one, Ryder. The man's body lay twisted in the dust, his black banner flapping beside him. But the mercenaries were ruthless. They dismounted like wolves circling prey, taking cover behind barrels and wagons, firing relentlessly. Ash shouted, "Hold! The line! Protect the saloon!" Emma clutched a small pistol Ash had given her earlier. Her hands trembled, but her eyes locked on Ash. "Tell me what to do," she said, voice steady beneath the fear. Ash looked at her, not as a fragile girl, but as someone who had earned her place in this fight. "You see anyone breach that porch, you aim center. Don't think, just pull." She nodded. Bullets kept flying. Logan ducked, reloaded, and shouted, "We won't last long if we don't split them up." Ash gritted, his teeth. "Then we take the fight to them." He sprinted from cover, rolled behind a wagon, and fired 2 clean shots, dropping another mercenary. The town's defenders were holding ground, but barely. Smoke curled in the air. Horses screamed and bolted. The mercenaries had the numbers, the weapons, and no regard for life. Emma's pistol trembled in her hand. She peeked through the saloon doorway and saw one of the riders sneaking up the side, silent as a shadow. She stepped out without thinking. Bang! The rider dropped. Emma had fired and hit dead center. She stood frozen, staring at the body. Her hands didn't tremble anymore. Ash saw it happen. Pride and a flicker of fear crossed his face. Not fear of her. Fear of what she might become. Logan joined, him behind cover, breathing hard. "She just shot a man." "She did," Ash replied, "and she didn't flinch." "She's changing," Ash whispered. "We all do, out here." But suddenly, a whistle, a signal. Then came the real threat. 2 more riders, late arrivals, thundered down the ridge with a Gatling gun mounted between them, an old army relic, deadly even from distance. Ash's eyes went wide. "They're gonna shred the town," and at that moment Logan shouted, "Everyone get down! Get down!" The Gatling gun began to spin, iron screaming against iron. Emma dove into the saloon, and the street turned into a storm of lead. The roar of the Gatling gun split the sky like thunder cracking stone. Bullets tore through walls, shattered windows, and sent townsfolk diving for cover. The street turned into hell, smoke, fire, and screams blending into one deafening chaos. Ash knew one thing. They wouldn't survive the next minute unless that gun was stopped. He grabbed Logan, by the shoulder behind the overturned wagon. They're focused on the front. We go around back, through the stable. We get that gun, or we all die. Logan looked toward the saloon. What about her? Ash's eyes flicked to Emma, who was helping a wounded boy crawl behind the bar. She looked up and nodded at him. No fear, no doubt. She'll hold, Ash said. The two men bolted through the alley behind the general store, ducking low as bullets whizzed overhead. The air stank of smoke and blood. Ash's heart pounded, but his aim never wavered. Inside the stable, they cut through horses and tack, emerging behind the mercenaries' position. And there it was, the Gatling gun, mounted on an old wagon, manned by two riders and shielded by crates. Logan muttered, "Suicide." Ash pulled out a stick of dynamite he'd grabbed earlier from the sheriff's lockbox. "I don't plan to die clean," Logan smirked. "What's the plan?" Ash grinned. "You ever see a horse kick a man off a mountain?" "What?" He slapped the rear of the nearest horse and yelled, "Now!" The beast bucked and charged out of the stable, straight into the Gatling team. Chaos. The gun stopped firing for a split second as one rider was thrown down, trying to dodge the stampede. Ash and Logan moved like ghosts, fast and deadly. Ash slid behind a crate, lit the dynamite, and lobbed it under the wagon. "Down!" A boom shook the ground as the wagon lifted in a fireball. The Gatling gun flipped sideways, its barrel melting under the flames. Two mercenaries lay dead. One limped, screaming. Ash stood up, blackened by soot, eyes scanning for more, but suddenly, a click. Behind him stood Malcolm Harlan, unburned, unshaken, alive. He had a revolver aimed at Ash's back. "You boys play brave real good," Malcolm growled. "But now it ends." Ash turned slowly. "You shoot me. The girl survives. She's stronger than you think." Malcolm smirked. "That's what scares me." And just as he pulled the trigger, bang! Malcolm's hand jerked, and the shot went. Wild, Emma stood at the alley's end, gun in her hand, smoke curling from the barrel. She'd shot his wrist, clean through. Malcolm howled, falling to his knees, dropping the gun. Ash looked at her, stunned. Emma stepped forward, voice cold as steel. "You auctioned me like cattle, but I'm not for sale anymore." Silence fell. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that follows thunder when everyone checks if they're still alive. Malcolm lay on the ground, clutching his bleeding wrist, howling like a beast cornered in its own den. His revolver lay feet away, useless now. Emma walked forward slowly. Her dress, once neat, was torn and dust-covered. Her hair wild from smoke and wind. But her eyes, they were clear, cold, unshaken. Ash stood frozen. He had seen gunslingers fire from instinct. He had seen outlaws shoot for survival, but he had never seen a woman fire from fury laced with years of silence. Emma didn't blink as she stared at Malcolm. "You told me I was weak," she said, her voice slicing like glass, "that no man would fight for me. You were right. They didn't." She raised the gun again, this time pointed at his chest. "I had to become my own weapon." Ash stepped in slowly, his voice low. "Emma, don't become him." Her hand trembled just slightly. Malcolm coughed blood, still defiant. "You think this changes anything? This town's done. You think shooting me'll save your soul, girl?" Emma looked down at him, then at the gun in her hand, and she made a decision. She dropped it. Not because she was afraid, but because she was free. She turned to Ash, breathing heavy. "I don't want to carry this weight forever." Ash walked. To her, took the gun and slipped it into his belt. Then, from the smoke behind, came the townspeople. Sheriff Carter limped forward, bloodied but alive. Logan followed, dragging one last mercenary into the dirt. The people of Elkhorn Ridge had watched this woman, once auctioned like cattle, rise like fire from ashes. Sheriff Carter tipped his hat. Ma'am, you may have just saved all of us. Emma looked around. For the first time, the town wasn't looking at her with pity. They were looking at her with respect. Logan added with a smirk, "Can't believe I'm saying this, but I'd ride with you over half the men I know." But the piece was short. Ash turned, eyes narrowed. "Where's Malcolm's brother?" Sheriff blinked. "What brother?" Ash cursed. "Harlan ain't stupid. He doesn't come alone. This was a show, a distraction." Just then, the town bell began to ring, not by hand, but by force. Boom, boom, boom. Smoke curled from the hilltop as dynamite exploded near the freight station. Emma gasped. "That's the escape route." Ash's jaw clenched. "He's sealing the town." And just then, a voice echoed from the ridge. "You may have won the street, boy, but the flames ain't done burning yet." It was Jacob Harlan, Malcolm's older brother, the real devil, behind the curtain, and he held a hostage. Smoke curled from the hills like a serpent uncoiling, black against the dying orange sun. The bell stopped ringing. A hush fell over Elkhorn Ridge. Then his voice came down, clear, booming, and cold. "You got guts, girl," Jacob Harlan said from the ridge. "But you forgot one thing." He yanked a figure into view, gun to the head. It was Mary Lou, the preacher's daughter, no more than 16, tied, shaking. A blood smear on her forehead. "You forgot I got insurance." Emma's face went pale. Her hand reached for the pistol at her waist, but it wasn't there. Ash had it. He stepped beside her, jaw tight. "Jacob's not like Malcolm. He doesn't want power. He wants to break people." Sheriff Carter growled, "He's bluffing. He won't kill a child." Ash shook his head. "He will, and he'll smile when he does." Logan loaded his shotgun. "Then we end this, tonight." But Emma raised her hand. "No," she whispered. "If we charge, he shoots her, and maybe more." Her voice was calm, measured. "She's scared. I know that fear. I lived it. Tied, helpless, while men made choices over my life like I was nothing." Everyone turned to her. She stepped forward, toward the center of the square, and yelled loud enough for the hills to hear. "I'll come up, Jacob. Alone." "You let the girl go." Ash grabbed her arm. "Emma, no!" She looked at him, eyes sharp. "You said I was the strongest person you knew. Prove it. Let me be that." Ash's hand dropped. Silence again. Then Jacob laughed. "Come on up, sweetheart. Let's see what you're made of." She started walking, one step at a time, through the wreckage of a broken street, past the burnt auction platform, past men who had once bid on her like cattle, now watching her like she was their last hope. She didn't flinch as she reached the slope. Jacob's men stood waiting. 4 of them, all armed, but they looked nervous, because this wasn't the same woman who had been tied and sold. This was someone else, Emma Harlan, the girl who shot the devil and kept walking. At the Outlaw Ridge, Jacob smiled at her like a cat with a cornered bird. "Thought you'd come up here with tears in your eyes. Didn't think you'd bring a storm instead." Emma stared at him. "You think you've won?" He leaned close. "I got the girl. I got your town surrounded. And I got your name." Emma tilted her head. "You got one thing wrong." Jacob blinked. She leaned in, whispered, "You don't own me." Suddenly, a loud crack in the distance, a sniper's shot from the church bell tower. One of Jacob's men dropped. Emma dove. Ash had sent Logan around back, quietly. A flank. Gunfire erupted. Bullets tore through the evening air like metal. "Bees!" Emma hit the ground behind a broken wagon wheel, heart pounding like a war drum. Jacob's men scrambled, shouting in panic. They hadn't expected a sniper. From the bell tower, Logan reloaded swiftly. Ash, rifle in hand, charged up the back ridge with 2 townsfolk. Sheriff Carter limped behind, still clutching his wounded, sighed, but determined. Jacob roared in fury. "You think this is enough to stop me? I built empires from blood. You're just a bunch of sheep with borrowed guns. Emma rolled to cover, eyes on Mary Lou, still tied to a wooden post just feet from Jacob. One false move, and she'd be caught in the crossfire. She didn't wait. Emma sprinted low and fast, weaving through smoke and rocks like she belonged to the wind. A bullet grazed her shoulder, but she didn't stop. She reached Mary Lou, sliced the ropes with a broken knife from her boot. Go, she whispered. Run to the church and don't look back. Mary Lou hesitated, then hugged her. You're not like they said, the girl whispered. You're not a victim. You're fire. Emma didn't have time to process the words. She pushed the girl down the slope just as another shot cracked overhead. Jacob saw it all. He turned, gun drawn, face twisted in rage. You ruined everything. I could have owned this whole town. Emma stood, shoulders squared despite the bleeding arm. You never owned anything, she said. Not the people, not this place, and definitely not me. He aimed and fired. Ash tackled him from the side, the bullet slicing through air where Emma's head had been a moment ago. The two men rolled, fists flying, gun clattering away. Jacob fought like a man with nothing left to lose. Wild, brutal, teeth bared, Ash fought like a man with something worth dying for. Emma limped toward them, picked up the dropped revolver. Ash was losing. Jacob's hand reached for a hidden knife. Bang! The shot echoed. Jacob froze, then crumpled. Ash lay gasping, blood on his lip. Emma stood over them both, revolver shaking in her hand. I told you, you don't own me. Jacob's eyes dimmed, and with one last breath, he whispered, You're her. Just like her. Emma leaned close, confused. What? But he was gone. Ash looked up at her, pain in his eyes. What did he mean? Just like her? Emma was shaking now, not from fear, but from something deeper, a memory, a face, a truth long buried. Ash touched her hand. Emma, who was your mother? She didn't answer, because she didn't know, but she was about to find out. The battlefield was silent now, bodies still, smoke lingering in the dusk like ghosts refusing to leave. Emma stood by Jacob's body, his last words echoing louder than any gunshot. You're her, just like her. Ash sat beside her, bruised and bleeding. Yet all his attention was on her face. Emma, he said softly. What did he mean? She didn't respond. She stared into the hills, where shadows seemed older than the town itself. Sheriff Carter approached, leaning on a broken rifle. I knew Jacob 30 years. There ain't a soul he feared, except one. Emma turned slowly. Who? The sheriff's jaw tightened. Her name was Mara Delancey, rode into these parts 20 years ago. Red hair, sharp tongue, and a faster gun than any man dared believe. Ash squinted. Delancey? That's an outlaw name. No, the sheriff said. That's a legacy. Emma's breath hitched. My mother's name wasn't Mara. Are you sure? The sheriff asked gently. You remember her? Emma blinked, a distant memory, a woman's voice humming a lullaby. Scarlet hair brushing her face, a gunshot, screams, fire, then darkness. I was 5, she whispered. All I remember is hiding under a bed. And smoke. Sheriff Carter nodded. Mara Delancey stood against the Harlan brothers. Jacob tried to buy her. Malcolm tried to tame her. She refused them both. Ash's eyes widened. They killed her. No, the sheriff said slowly. She disappeared. Vanished one night after torching half the Harlan estate. Took her daughter with her. Emma's hands trembled. You're saying I'm her daughter? The sheriff looked at her with soft eyes. I'd bet my badge on it. Ash chuckled, low and amazed. Well, no wonder you shoot like the wind and walk like fire. But Emma wasn't smiling. She stepped back, looking around at the town, at the faces watching her. Women, Men, children, not just survivors, witnesses. "I don't want to be a legend," she whispered. "I just wanted to be free." Ash stood. "You are, but legends don't get to choose. They're made by moments like this." She closed her eyes. The name Mara Delancey rang inside her like a long-lost bell finally found. And then, from the edge of town, came a rider. Tall, cloaked, slow-moving. Emma's hand went to her holster, instinctively. The rider stopped, pulled back their hood, an older woman, with faded red hair, scars on her cheek. Ash gasped. "Is that—" Emma dropped her gun. The woman dismounted and whispered, "Emma." Tears welled in Emma's eyes. "Mama?" The town held its breath. The past had returned, but not with peace, because Mara Delancey had come with news that would change everything again. The townsfolk stood frozen, their eyes darting between Emma and the woman with red hair standing like a ghost in the fading light. "Mama," Emma whispered again, voice breaking like a child who had just learned how to hope again. Mara Delancey stepped forward, tears glittering in her hardened eyes. "I thought I lost you," she said softly. "That fire, that night. I tried to come back, but the Harlans spread word you were dead." Emma stumbled into her arms, 2 decades of questions collapsing into one tight embrace. Ash watched, hat in hand, his throat tight. Even Sheriff Carter looked away, letting them have the moment he'd prayed to witness in his years of regret. But Mara wasn't just here for reunion. She stepped back and said, "Emma, there's something you need to know. Jacob Harlan wasn't just trying to auction you to humiliate you. He wanted to tie you to the land." Emma frowned. "What land?" Mara reached into her saddlebag and pulled out an old, burned map. Faded, but still legible. "This land, all of Dry Creek. It used to belong to my father, your grandfather, until the Harlans forced us out. They faked deeds, bought judges, made me an outlaw when I tried to fight back." Ash stepped closer. "You mean this whole town?" Mara nodded. "Legally, Emma is the rightful heir. The land title was never fully destroyed, just buried." Gasps rippled through the townsfolk. The very ground they stood on wasn't Harlan land. It was Delancey land. Sheriff Carter, with trembling hands, held up the map. I remember this signature. I saw it once when I was a deputy. It's real." Emma looked around. The saloon, the church, the dirt she bled into. She hadn't just fought to survive. She had unknowingly fought for her own land. But she didn't smile. She turned to the people. "I won't be like the Harlans. This land, it belongs to all of us. Anyone who's worked it, bled on it, prayed over it. It's yours too." Someone began to clap, then another. Soon the whole town was cheering. Emma Delancey had risen from Ash, not to rule, but to restore. Ash came to her side, his voice low. "So, what now?" Emma looked at the sky. "We rebuild, together." Mara smiled. "You're more like me than I ever dared hope, but stronger." Just then, little Mary Lou came running with a handful of daisies. "Miss Emma, they're blooming again." Emma knelt, took the flowers, and looked around. The town wasn't just surviving anymore, it was healing, and at its heart stood a woman once sold like cattle, now standing as the land's rightful flame. If this story stirred something in your heart, then don't just scroll away, partner. Hit that like button to keep these tales alive. Subscribe so you never miss the next ride through the wild frontier, and tell us in the comments, what part of this story stayed with you the most? 'Cause out here in Elkhorn Ridge, every soul's got a story and we reckon yours might be next.